Hello and welcome once again to the Dragon Age series. Right, so the idea with this solo prequel play, usually with the GM and the players, is that it gives the players and the GM a little bit of experience before going into the campaign, the heat of the moment on them, just to get used to the mechanics and for the players to get used to their characters. If you've got an opinion on that, head on over to the video I made on that subject. I'll annotate it on screen now and you can leave some comments and tell me if you think it works when you've done it for your campaigns, or if you are now inspired to do it as such. Well, anyway, normally I do one-to-ones, but I had an idea here, a new idea, because I had limited time with the last two fellows that I still had to run something with, so I decided to do a 2-on-2 instead, and GM that little encounter. Now, instead of them trying to have them come up with some sort of backstory for it or whatever, I just thought I'd throw them in the deep end. And I decided, well, okay, the two of you, one, Apostate Mage, and two, the other guy, the Avvar Hillsman Warrior. So you've got a little and large dynamic straight away here. I want you to come into the campaign, history with each other, kind of like you are already a travelling set of two, and this is going to ultimately be how you met. So instead of having them try and think of how they met and then trying to let them run an encounter somewhere along their travels together, I decided to run their actual origin story. And what better way to have an origin than something out of your control, something the GM could designate, and then let them build on that. So I came up with an origin, trusted in my own writing instincts to come up with something of good quality, and I threw that at them, and now they have something that feels more lifelike, because they didn't have to make it up, because we wouldn't make up what our own lives are, would we? We wouldn't write our own lives and what happened to us. Now, with that said, let's throw ourselves into the action and find out what happened next. So, it all started off with our Apostate Mage. He's come on into town, I don't know, maybe boiled up some water in a pot a little faster than he should have, applied a little bit of energy. Some keen-eyed bugger has been watching him. It's an opportunist, brigand type. He's a little bit of a downtrodden type, and he thinks, you're a blimmin' mage, aren't you? And you're not an official one either. You know, he's intelligent enough to work out how he might gain from it when it suits him. He's intelligent enough if he can make a bit of coin out of it. And he thinks, right, I'm going to shop you in. So he makes an approach on this guy and says, look, come quietly. I know what you are. I know you're an apostate. And, you know, he would have tried denying it and this sort of thing. And he ends up getting pursued by this guy anyway. And we join the action with our Apostate Mage being pursued through town. Now, he's run through this small town area, and there's a big square up ahead, so he thinks, hopefully there's going to be a lot of people about. I'll be able to lose him sort of in the milling area. Hopefully there's a market on or something. That'll do it. So he runs on into the square, and there's no market on, there's no lots of people, and there's just a few people around, and there's no one really near him, and he's quite exhausted anyway. He doesn't really want to have to run anymore, you know. I guess his chest is going to be hurting. He's not really got a lot of stamina, being a mage. And of course, an Apostate Mage is a mage that is unofficial. You see, it's an illegal mage, an unsanctioned mage, and mages in Dragon Age are considered dangerous without the proper sanctioning of the circle training. And that's what the Templars hunt down, really, because such mages could go to blood magic or end up with severe demonic possession and cause all sorts of problems for reality and humanity and all the rest of the T's. So our mage was being played by Craig. So, you know, enter stage right. The guy hasn't come yet, so he thinks, maybe I've lost him. Maybe he's not going to turn up. And there's a sound of a barking dog somewhere off in the distance as well. I'll just point that out, put that in there now. Foreshadow! He sees a really big Avvar Hillsman. Now, the Avvarians, they are the people from the Frostback Mountains. They are the barbarian types. They are kind of tougher than the Ferelden people, and that's saying something because the Ferelden people are tough. And they've been to war with the land before. They don't really sit very well with each other. An Avarian's kind of an outsider in Ferelden anyway, looked down upon. Maybe not as much as the elves, the knife ears, but maybe more in some ways, though, thinking about it. This apostate is a human, I might just add, so at least he's not an elf as well. But you see, what we have here is an Avvar Hillsman, and he's in the stocks. Right? Now they've been rained on and made weak over all of the years, and the metal hinge parts that connect it are really rusted and they haven't been looked after. But he's this big bulky guy in there, and he almost looks too big for them anyway. And yeah, he's in the stocks. And that is Jez. So that's our other player. So now enter stage right, Jez. Well, he didn't really enter, he's part of the scenery at the moment, isn't he? He's in stocks. So I let them know that these are, they've never met each other before, obviously. He just sees this Avvarian, and I say, right guys, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So obviously the Hillsman doesn't speak, and it's the Apostate speaks to him, and he says, look, I'm being followed. Do you think if I was to let you out, you'd be able to help me? And he's like, the exchange between them, the conversation between them was really funny. So I can see that they're going to play this up as a real little and large mismatched duo, very, very funny with each other. And he's like, yeah, you know, why should I help you? You know, why have I got to bother doing that and that sort of thing? You know, it's already too late for me. Well, why are you in the stocks then? Can me just ask about that? And he's like, oh, you know, I just slapped some lass on the bottom, and now they've stuck me in here, sort of thing. You know, I suppose it was a tavern wench that he hadn't paid for. So he's being a little bit coy with him, and being coy isn't really very clever because obviously they're being pursued, which is, as to the silliness really, I decided, right, you know, they're having a really good conversation, a good exchange, but I need to put the heat on here, so I decided to roll a d6 to see how long it would take the guy to sort of catch up and figure out where they were. Well, not necessarily even the guy, but we'll get to that in a sec. So I rolled a 6, so I thought, I'll give them loads of time, let them just chat. So let them do their stupid thing, this stupid conversation they're having. It's great. And it was really funny. He was like, well, look, I'm being chased, and now you're a big burly warrior. You can do something about it. And in exchange, I'll let you out of them stocks. How about it? So they finally agreed to it after the silliness between them. And so he says, right, okay, I'm going to be using my magic to get him out with a at the locks. I was like, what was that? And he said, like that. I was like, right. Okay, I don't know what dice roll we need to be able to cast. But, alright, when you're a mage, you start with 3 spells, okay? So his 3 spells are Heal, Heroic Offense, and Stone Fist. So the Heal spell, you know, it's pretty evident what that will do. The Heroic Offense is a buff to give you more strength. Stone Fist is a projectile attack. You hurl a lump of stone at the enemy. Well, anyway, there isn't a pick-lock spell. And I started to think, okay, should we start messing around with whether we can even attempt a pick-lock thing here? I mean, he doesn't really have any lock-picking tools anyway, so... And then I said, do you know what? This is funny, that just to add to the comedy here. The Avvarian, he just frees himself. He just likes, okay, and he just breaks straight through the stocks. The mechanism just snaps with his force he exerts on it, and just stands up, which suggests that he could have got out any time he damn well liked, but didn't want to break the law any further. He knew he was strong enough to get out. But then the mage would be all like, well, see, I told you that spell worked, didn't I? You know, they're a real... they're a real two, I tell you, they're a real duo, these. The barking sound, like a dog or a big dog, it's getting really quite loud now. And the Avvarian Hillsman warrior decides to start heading across the square towards the area where the mage ran from. He said, all right, well, I'll deal with him up front. If he shows his face, I'll deal with him. And this great big Mabari warhound appears in the square. You know, its haunches go up. It's growling, it's barking, it's vicious, and it's barking very, very loud as if to let its master know where it is. So it seems that this opportunist has a Mabari, and is working with a Mabari, and even the mage didn't know that. So he must have something of the mage as an item, and getting him to sniff him out. He's holding his ground, the Mabari. Meanwhile, like I say, the warrior's striding over across the square towards the dog and holding his position. The opportunist arrives at the square and spots the mage, and he's like, right, there's the mage! Go on, sick him! You know, as I say, he's a bit of an idiot. He doesn't really deserve this Mabari. But I think he probably acquired it in a way like Han might have acquired Chewbacca. It could be sort of an honour thing. The way his master was lost from him, but he didn't have a body to be able to stay with and guard. Float down a river or something like that and over a waterfall. You know, maybe he saves the dog's life as well from the river, and he probably only did it because of the expensive looking gems on the dog's collar. But now he's got a Mabari following him. The Mabari are quite intelligent, but I suppose this one's a few pegs down on the chain of cleverness. You know, he was felt comfortable as soon as he, the opportunist guy, had put on his ex-master's coat that he'd left on the bank before going for his wash in the stream, which was a foolish thing to do because it was actually more a river. So anyway, he orders this Mabari to charge. Now, the run speed of the Mabari, because they are 46 yards away, or at least the Apostate is, the Avvarian had made it about halfway across between the two of them-ish. So we've got miniatures out at this point, and a measuring tape as well. So we're really doing this by the squares. His exact run distance took him, instead of to the Apostate, took him exactly to the Hillsman. So, and the Hillsman said, right, I'm bracing my sword in a sort of forward spear position if the dog's coming in and try and use its momentum there. And so I let that happen because coincidentally, the end of the movement stops exactly at the barbarian. Normally I'd have had him maybe try and go round him or something, but it literally stops right at the miniature and halts right at it. So I thought, wow, that's mad. So we'll let it go through because of the perfect mathematics of the situation. And I had him try and do a acrobatics dexterity to not get stabbed, and he just took like 1 health loss just from minor graze of like trying to skid to a stop there. He's been engaged by the Hillsman. Bear in mind, when you run, that's your major action, and you can't attack with any of your minors. So that's that, really. Oh, and I should just add, before things got really out of control, the Mage, before the combat encounter started, during narrative time, the Mage put the heroic offense buff on Tanadil, the Hillsman. So he's +1 strength for this encounter. And that made a lot of difference. Apostate, so he casts a Stone Fist. We had a bit of a situation where we figured there'd be about a partial line of sight because he was going to move, but normally when you're firing ranged attacks, there's normally for ranged attacks, okay? Shooting into a melee engaged combat is normally -2 to hit, but spells don't really roll to hit. You just roll to try and cast a spell, and then you've cast a spell and off it goes. So it's a bit funny, isn't it? Spells have always been able to break things like that. I'll give you an example, like Warhammer Fantasy Miniature Games Workshop game. You know, it always, cover never went into account, did it? Because it was always like minus cover off of your ballistic skill chance to hit, but it never applied to spells. So if there was a lot of people in cover, you'd send your mages at it, wouldn't you? Your wizards. So there's always been a bit of a grey area like that, and we had a bit of a debate there at the table, and I hadn't thought about it, really, because I hadn't really run the system yet, which is what these prequel sessions are really good for, you know, getting some of the chinks out, as it were. And I said, well, one thing we could possibly do when it's a situation of someone engaged in melee, which would normally be the -2, or someone in cover that would be a minus of whatever, is we could say that the actual damage effects of the spell are minused by however much the modifier would be. Because literally it's not the full of the spell hitting it. You're literally having to do everything to stop your spell hitting your ally. Or, in the case of scenery, some of it's splashing and hitting the scenery. So it takes that much of damage off of the effects of the spell. You know, if it's like a fireball, and, I don't know, there's someone's behind a tree with it sticking out of it, the fireball, you know, hits the a part of the tree and part of him. So that's not all of the fireballs just hit him. We're thinking something along the lines of that anyway. So I'm being mindful. What do you guys think? How do you think that would be a good way to house rule modifiers on magic? The Stone Fist, he managed to move out round to the side and fire this Stone Fist thing at the hound anyway. And it went in, smacked the dog down to the ground with its after effect as well. He couldn't resist that. So he's prone. It was Tanadil's turn to strike because the guy was rubbish. I mean, he was just going to, you know, try and start firing his crossbow, and he doesn't really want to get in there. I mean, the fact that this Avarian's just appeared has just spoilt his day. He'd rather, you know, keep the big guy busy with the dog, So his idea was, right, I'll go after the Mage. Perfect. But it was going to be the Avvarian, as I say, and the Avvarian had a massive modifier plus to hit because the Mavari was lying there prone. So he got in with his big great sword and brought it down straight on the dog. Oh, brother. And he procced 6 stunt points as well. So he did huge amounts of damage, as that sword would do. And then he had all these stunt points as well to spend. It was just crazy. I know in that fight he made use of seize the initiative to go top of the initiative tree so that he gets to go before everyone else. Inflicted extra damage on the Mavari. Well, anyway, the Mavari was reduced to 0 health. It's lying there, dying. When the guy decided to take a shot, you know, he whimpers. The opportunist, he's like, "You killed my blimmin' dog!" Like that, and he fires this shot, and it whizzes right past the Avvar's ear. He's like, you know, but boom, finishes off the dog. He starts addressing and heading towards the opportunist a little bit. Does his best Incredible Hulk TV series impression with the muscle man pose. And says, you know, you sling your hook, or this is going to happen to you next, sort of thing. And then the opportunist was like, why are you sticking up for that apostate? He's only going to lead you into trouble. He's an illegal mage. And the Avvar's like, well, why are you still here asking questions, you know? Sod off, or I'm going to do you. He was a little reluctant still to go. So then the apostate mage came forward, fired another Stonefist spell straight at him, and this one punched him right in the eye. Reddened his eye. I've decided it's going to be permanently bloodshot now. You know, he's there trying to pull bits of grit out and stuff like that from the stone hitting. You know, and he's holding his eye and moaning and whimpering. Yeah, it was only a little tiny bit of damage, but, you know, just that. It was more the insult of it. And they say, go on, bugger off. And he says, you know, you're for it. You know, if I ever meet you again, you're for it. Time's going to come. And then he backs off. And he's weak now, but you see, you always have the ability to have a reoccurring character, don't you? You know, for him to come back at some point. He sods off anyway, back with his one red eye, to learn and grow and get, you know, fiddle his way into whatever high up position he's going to be on the payroll for, to improve himself in some way. And there we have this encounter where those two have met, and it was quite successfully done. And I thought, yeah, do you know what? I won't rub it all in. I won't let the combat all run out because, you know, it is 2-on-1. They dispatched the dog really fast. It didn't even get a bite in. You know, this is incredible. I mean, the fight went so badly for the NPC team. And, of course, they do suggest things like, you know, NPCs being able to fall back and run away. And I did a big Intimidate modifier, actually. It was an opposed test between the Avvar's Intimidate, who has skill focus in it, I might add, and plus it would have been massive modifiers against him because it would have been a 2-on-1 combat too. So, you know, you start having those as modifiers against you. He knew better and he got out of there. So that's how that one went. Our 2 new characters, funny characters, and maybe I'll be able to get something recorded of a bit of banter between them and let you see the sort of chemistry I'm talking about between this bizarre little and large combination. But anyway, thank you for joining us on this report on what happened. Keep your eyes peeled because there's more of this sort of content coming up as well for Dragon Age. And, did someone say Talis? We'll have to wait and see. But until next time, I will see you at the Prequel play table.